So what I did do this year, though, is the British Psychological Society launched a program. So it's the first faculty in the world, and it is the first course in the world, it's the first textbook in the world on the psychology of men and boys. So I did that course at the beginning of the year, which was really interesting because we have largely maternalized care. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So I'm saying, sometimes I do like to talk about my feelings, and I do like to talk, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I like to do stuff, and I want solutions to things. I don't want to ruminate and reflect and talk and whatever, So we need to be creating a range of options. As I spoke earlier about the fluidity of gender, there needs to also be a multitude of options available to young people. And when we were talking about the DSM earlier, the DSM, and Dr. Elias is going to talk shortly, but the DSM is an interesting thing. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So it's written for diagnosticians and statisticians. It's not written for mental health and mental health wellness. It's so you can make claims against a code so that you can have a diagnosis, so you can get access to medical aid by people who are registered with. It's not a system that we must use to label. And the labels can be very, very damaging, because what happens is we get young people who end up with an identity of a mental health patient. And we've seen that more and more. Okay. So now it gives me it's a great honor to introduce Teresa, who's got be good, eh? Mm-hmm. Okay. She's got a very personal story, and I have joined the organization as a fellow director, and very proud to be so.
Thank you, Luke. We're very proud to have you too. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a journey that may get a little bumpy along the way, of how we came to put together an organization called STOPS, focused on stopping the trauma of pupils in South Africa and schools, mainly for boys. So the program is completely open to, it has no gender preference, but I'll explain how that all works. So let's first talk about trauma. So trauma is not an event, and I think I had to learn this for myself even when I discovered that my child was traumatized, or my young man at that stage. I kept thinking, so what happened? What happened? What happened? When did it happen? And it was not one single incident. It was a series of violations and kind of alienations as a result of the violations that became it's an overwhelming fear response. And I think that is why trauma is so difficult to heal, so difficult to treat, is because it's not one thing that happened. It's not going to say, okay, you broke your leg, we'll put it in a cast and you'll be fine. It's a multitude of things, some of which are suppressed, some of which the individual themselves don't even know that they are feeling, but they are feeling this overwhelming fear for everything because they're in a hyper-alert state. So being trapped in trauma is an overwhelming position. You're overwhelmingly in stress. You have uncontrolled emotions, different kinds of coping mechanisms, whether that's fight, flight, or freeze, and that may cause you a lot of excessive thought, so lots of rumination, thinking of how bad you are, how could you change the situation, why didn't you why did you? A lot of very racing thoughts that alone, on their own, can exhaust anyone mentally. And then, of course, that results in behavioral or substance addiction as a way to cope with this overwhelming fear. You actually don't know how to calm yourself. I remember my son saying to me, "Mom, I can't explain how I feel. I come home from school and I've got goosebumps all over me. And I said, was there something at school that wasn't good? She said, no, sixth form is great. I just don't know why when I come back from school, I am totally triggered. By what, I don't know, but I've got goosebumps and my heart is pumping and I don't know what's wrong with me, Mom. Please, can you take me to a cardiologist? I think I've got a problem. That turned out not to be the case, and I was rather thinking how inconvenient he was for asking me to take him to the medical emergency on the day before my medical aid commenced, the 28th of February. I was like, can't you just take a discipline? We can go tomorrow. But as a good mother, he was sitting there and he said, Mom, I can't. I actually can't. I'm out of my skin. And I don't think I understood that until I lost him. And that's where the cycle really becomes tragic, because our son was trapped in trauma and suffered in silence from sexual abuse that took place at school when he was just 9 to 12. And I wish in this presentation I had included a picture of this 9-year-old. We're small people, so we're talking about a 9-year-old that looks like he's in grade 1. So the trauma of that was just too much for him. He was silenced by shame. There are very many dynamics within the school environment that made it very difficult for him to even speak to himself or even acknowledge it himself, or speak to peers, or even speak to us as parents. We're a very, very close family. We'd had the conversation about good touch and bad touch. And we'd had all of those conversations that you can come to us and it's not there, just tell us, there's no panic. And somehow knowing that it was wrong made it even worse. So when people turn around and say, oh, you must teach your children about the birds and the bees and everything from an early age, that doesn't mean that you mustn't, but don't think it's enough. Because, in our case, it turned to be an element that pushed him away, and he felt like he couldn't come to his parents because he was the one in the wrong. He was to blame. So, tragically, that was a journey from the time that there was a disclosure and a realization on Chille's behalf that he had been abused and he wasn't the only one. That made him feel more angry with himself because he felt he had a duty and a right, a duty and responsibility to have spoken out so that other boys didn't get punished and didn't suffer the same experience. So he again blamed himself as what kind of person was he that he couldn't stand up to something that he knew was wrong and live with himself. And for many, many other reasons, and he tragically writes in his own eulogy that if only I could have loved myself a quarter as much as I loved everybody else. And as he tragically took his life in a psychiatric hospital that was meant to keep him safe, that is just more devastating for us. And the most devastating thing for us was that we thought we'd failed at the most important job in our life. And that was to keep our child alive and safe from harm. That lives with us. And as much as we know cognitively there are other reasons and it's not exactly true, and the feeling is when you lose a child is that you failed. And we did, but the whole society failed. In this case, the school failed. The whole system failed. The pedophile failed. institution where he was sent to be kept safe failed. And can I must I speak louder? Sorry. I must not actually hide behind the podium. So yeah, there are just no words for our loss, only more trauma. So as we go through this being trapped in trauma, I think about what Luke says, and there's no trappe van vergelijking in trauma, but there's a horrific trauma cycle that, if not nurtured and supported, has people moving from freeze and shut down back into hyperactivation repetitively and indefinitely until they are helped in a sensitive way to deal with their trauma. So our way of dealing with our trauma from Julio's death was to register stops. And in the beginning, we didn't know exactly what we were going to do, but the one thing I wanted to do was stop the trauma of children in schools. No one should ever have to suffer in silence without support. So that was my founding motivation. Oh, no, we're not going to show video. Sorry. Press again. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So after one devastating year of not being able to get out of bed, to the second year when I could get out maybe before 12, we decided to take the pain that we were feeling and try and turn it into a purpose, because it wasn't abating and I really wanted to help other people. And the main thing that we wanted to do, the key thing that hurt us the most, was our son could not speak out. He was silenced in shame. He didn't have a space where he could speak out, maybe not even to his parents, not because his parents wouldn't listen, but because he did not feel comfortable having the conversation about something so sensitive with a peer member, with his parents, or for that matter, definitely not the school psychologist. So there is this void, and we needed to try and find a way. How do we fill this void and actually get so many more people an access point to trauma treatment, to any kind of treatment? It doesn't have to be as severe as trauma. It could be that you're freaking out before an exam and you're hyperventilating and you just need to be given a few skills on how to manage your emotions at that point in time. So this led to STOPS, and our STOPS mission purpose is really just to provide youth direct access to support. We established STOPS as a independent and confidential, two very important words, one being independent, that is not related to your parents or to the school or to anyone else. It's your journey. You own the journey, you own the relationship with the therapist. And we developed it into a safe reporting line as well as a student support services, and this is where I was just so blessed, and I've been blessed quite a bit, interestingly, since I lost my boy, by very strange and, let's just say, synchronicity meetings and people that I've met. The MD of Lera, who's the company that we have partnered with to manage and deliver these services, moved into the house where his girlfriend lived, across the road from us. Somehow maybe there was an energy that she felt that she needed to, as a professional, help us develop this. And which is really great is that the student support services are empowered by cutting-edge technology, and they provide multi-access points, I'll explain a little further after the slide, to real-life counselors via live chat or toll-free call and on an app. So a lot of people at this point go, okay, so how is this different to all of the lines that you have out? You know what? In a way, it's not. In a way, there is no difference because everybody in this space is trying to make a difference to one starfish at a time. But our approach, and you could go on to the next slide, thanks. Our approach is centered around a strategy of building stops as a specific pillar which goes out and does credible training, and that's why we were so proud to have an incredible Luke Lamprecht join us on the board, podcasts, webinars, we care workshops. So that is what the identity of STOPS is going to do. But more than that, I didn't want to be just another activist. I wanted to be an activist, but just not only an activist. So I engaged Lera Southern Africa, who is part of the leading global providers of mental health solutions. They actually already provide mental health solutions to over 17 million people in 30 different countries around the world, in multiple languages, and in South Africa also in multiple languages. Lera bought into ICAS, if anyone knows of ICAS previously, but then acquired a huge amount of investment in terms of technology and capability. And when I presented the wild idea to Navlika, that if employers can provide independent access to confidential support, how can schools provide that to children? And that was kind of the turning point, and the penny dropped, and they very kindly, over the next 2 months, helped me define my vision, and then what we would actually offer in the STOPS student support program. So the support is unlimited. For the way it works, so let me rather take a step back, is a school will register with Lera. There is a small fee per student, and that is 0.03% of school fees, and it's indexed obviously to the school fees. So at the lowest end, you might pay R5 a month, and you only pay over 10 months, R50 a year for unlimited access to therapists. Going on up into the private school levels, so it's a kind of socialized funding model. They will pay the same percentage of their school fees, but it works out at like R150 a month and 1,500 a year. And anyone who has been to therapy will know that 1,500 a year is less than your one therapy session. And that, as per the stats that Dee Blackie shared, it's a simple function of supply and demand. So we are hoping here to be able to put the psychologists into the pocket of the child and young adults, so that they can open up the app, they can immediately chat, they could say, I'm in a difficult situation, or they can phone, they can chat to someone, and then set up scheduled virtual sessions. And in a really important needs basis, for virtual one-on-one therapy, they have a network of 800 psychologists around the country that will actually, they can reach out to find one that is the closest to that individual, and was actively suicidal and didn't know what to do. She phoned the line, and the first thing they asked her said, are you alone? Where could you go where there are other people? And they stayed on the line with her for over 2 hours until she walked across to the garage next door and told her to go and buy something to eat, and wait until they got the ambulance to come to that garage to help take her to a place of safety. So they really are committed to what they do, and amazing, an amazing organisation that wants to do more. So I think the video is next. Hi, I'm Teresa Mordoh, the founding director of STOPS. STOPS is a non-profit organisation focused on stopping the trauma of pupils in schools. And this is a really important crisis that we are facing in South Africa and in fact in the world. In honor of our late son, Julio, we registered the STOPS as a non-profit organisation so that no child should suffer in silence. Our youth experience severe trauma, mental health issues, and exam stress and very many other kinds of stress. It's really important that we are able to provide professional services to address these concerns so that they don't perpetuate into the future. Kids don't have an independent way in which to express themselves. They may have issues opening up to people at school because that might be where they're suffering traumatic experiences. They may also not be comfortable sharing their trauma directly with their parents. We're very excited about the partnership with LERA in order for us to develop relevant and inspiring content on the platform for youth. In our collaboration, we have established an opportunity to be able to provide youth access to very needed resources. The youth of today are really under pressure with all the amounts of stress and mental health concerns, and they need a place to seek support. As a parent, I'm truly inspired by the collaboration and what we've managed to achieve as an innovative solution. The youth and the vulnerable no longer need to suffer in silence, as they can now access a real-life counsellor through the hub to ensure that we get the support into the hands of our youth. Okay, thank you, and that's me.
We'll take questions at the end. Yes, we'll have a panel at the end where people can ask once everyone's presented. So thanks very much to Julio's parents. And you know, the thing is when you choose to have a child, you choose to have your heart walk around outside your body for the rest of your life. And when that heart gets broken, there cannot be anything more devastating. So I would just like to recognize the bravery of Julio's parents. And we talk about a concept in sexual abuse where we talk about first being a victim, which their son certainly was. Then you talk about a survivor, sadly he wasn't. Then you talk about a thriver, which is someone who overcomes it, which is what Daniela is going to address. And then we talk about an organizer, which is someone who takes where they were once broken, and that is actually the part where they are stronger. And that's what the Mordoh family have done. So it's a very big honor to be